Hello, boys and girls. It's Mr. Slinkard here. You know, I'm going to be reading some more chapters for you out of You Go First. I like to get really comfy when I'm reading, so I like to sit around lots of pillows, have a blanket, maybe a cup of tea. So I like to be really comfortable whenever I'm reading. So make sure you're comfortable and let's get started. Life According to Ben, Part 20. You could have sworn a gun went off, but it turned out to be bang snaps, said Mrs. Yang, the principal. She was a kind-faced woman. If Ben was feeling more like himself, he would ask about the photos on her bookshelf and the accolades on her wall. But instead, he sat and stared at a nick in her desk that reminded him of the dark mark from Harry Potter. Seemed fitting. Mrs. Carlisle sat to his left, his mother to his right, all eyes on him. Mrs. Yang frowned. They threw them just as Ben started his speech. They were sitting in the front row on the bleachers, right in front of the podium. Who are they? Asked Mrs. Boxer. Theo Barrett, Derek Vass, and David Landry, said Miss Yang. Sherry Bertrand, too, Mrs. Carlisle added. Bunch of little tyrants. It could have been complete chaos. What with the popping sound and everything, a few kids screamed, but not everyone heard it. And Miss Abelard took action right away. She realized they were just firecrackers and really averted what could have been a disaster. Just firecrackers, Ben thought. The word just dug into his skin. I don't understand, Ben's mother said. Ben simultaneously wanted to hug his mother and tape her mouth shut. He slunk down into his chair and kept his eyes focused on the dark mark. He decided to think of something. He decided to think of something else. Was Mrs. Yang's desk oak or pine? How do you tell the difference? Maybe it was cherry wood. They threw the bang snaps just as Ben was getting started, Miss Yang said. Her voice was hesitant, like she wanted the words to land as softly as possible. Did they interrupt the other kids' speeches too? His mother asked. There was a pause, a long, giant, heavy pause. No, Mrs. Yang said, just Ben's. Ben heard his mother exhale. It terrified several of the students, Mrs. Yang paused, and I'm sure Ben was already nervous giving a speech in front of the whole school. The air choked him. Mrs. Carlisle leaned over and put on a hand on Ben's shoulder. It felt like hot coal. He wanted to shake it off. We immediately hauled them to the office. Mrs. Yang continued. One of our teachers noticed something was wrong with Ben. She noticed She noticed something wrong with Ben, so she walked over, made a very nice announcement that all the speeches would be postponed. Mrs. Yang picked up a pencil, put it down again. She got him out of there. I didn't think anyone noticed anything out of place. Not sure. Not true, Ben thought. People noticed. He heard them laughing, snickering. All it would have taken was one person to see. Mrs. Abelard had done her best to block their view. But there's only so much you can do. Just one person, that's all it takes. Students of Lancaster Middle School, that's all he'd been able to say. He didn't think he'd ever talk again. His beak had been stitched together. Silence swelled inside the office, an uncomfortable nothingness that radiated toward Ben and threatened to suffocate him until it was broken by a faint but distinct buzz. It was his phone, which was in his pants, which were in the plastic bag at his feet. When Ben didn't move, Mrs. Carlisle rummaged around looking for it. He felt faintly sorry that she had to stick her hand in his damp clothes to stop the buzzing, all while he sat there. But he was incapable of moving. "It's a Pennsylvania number," she said softly. "You weren't supposed to have cell phones at school. If you did, they had to be turned off and stowed away." Ben never bothered with that because no one ever called or texted him during the day anyway. He wondered if he would get a reprimand. "Ben Boxer, I realize you are the biggest dork in school and now the district's, no, the state's, greatest laughingstock. But phones are not allowed." The phone stopped buzzing. There was a pause, then it buzzed again. It wasn't Lottie's number. He didn't want to talk to anyone. He wanted to become part of the carpet or Mrs. Yang's desk. But Lottie Locke had skipped school today. She was taking the train into the city. "There's a text," said Miss Carlisle. "It says, 'It's an emergency.'" The word emergency replaced the uncomfortable silence in the room with anxious static. The phone buzzed again. "Do you know anyone in Pennsylvania?" his mother asked. "Yes," Ben said. He took the phone and answered it.